As Bernard and Elsie try to put together the pieces, we learn the true reason behind Delos' involvement with the parks. And despite his black hat ways, is William beginning to find his own humanity? It's HBO's Westworld, Season 2, Episode 4, Riddle of the Sphinx. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Westworld. So yes, of course, lots of spoilers ahead. Alright, nice episode this week. Really moving the story forward, filling in some backstory here, progressing things, answering a lot of questions that we've had. I like the pacing that they have with sort of dropping information here. They're hinting at it and they're letting us know, and then they're hinting at the next step and sort of letting us know. The pace is working, I think, really well this episode. So of course we get our first view of James Delos, looking much healthier than last time that we see him. I love the setup, I have to say. I loved that long, slow, single camera shot pan over what's going on in the room. And of course, a small room, so they're keeping everything tight, which I also loved. It's like, oh, high-tech record, and here's the thing, and here's the book, and here's how it all moves around. I love that sort of setup. It really sort of pulled us into the mood and gave us that feel of the environment. And of course, we start to find out this isn't just Delos, this is of course robot Delos. This is the beginning stages. This is the whole idea that we have that William saw with what you could do with the parks. And that is basically create replacements for people. Take their consciousness, move it into a new body. They didn't get into too much of the specifics. They did like neural testing and patterning and stuff like this is how they're moving these ideas on. But I guess that is the idea. That's the point. They have such complex, realistic recreations with a host of human beings. If you could just find some way of putting a person's brain in there, they can live forever. Which is a great idea. Much more complicated in practice than in theory, of course. What we find out is these manifestations, these bots, these constructs, have a shelf life, and a very short one apparently, starting off at 7 days, but even by the time they get to the 149th, the last iteration, it's only, what, 35 days before they hit their cognitive plateau, a basic dismissal of reality, and the whole brain sort of falls apart into jelly. So again, a good progression. Was kind of shocked the first time that they took out that particular iteration of Delos. I thought they were just gonna zzz and zap him. They torched the whole room. Why? Doesn't that seem like a little bit of overkill? Why do you gotta get rid of the whole room? I don't know. But I did love how they did the time progression there. How, of course, we have the younger William, and then he starts to get a little older, a little grayer, and then we finally, again, get that huge jump to we have our older women, our older William, our man in black manifestation, and that James's responses change. You know, initially, of course, he recognizes William, and then when we get into our final version, our man in black, it's who the hell are you? Oh my God! And again, that acceptance of the passage of time, I liked for James, how he's able to sort of try to grasp this reality, and that he was a bot, and that, but it just, you know, and the time has passed, and despite his urge to go out there, that it's just not working out. And that's how we have our series of questions that are repeated each time, our baseline. Can he maintain this? And again, it doesn't seem that this lasts this long. Also notice the shake as he started to go. Reminded me a lot of Abernathy when he started to lose it, when he started to fall. It was his cognitive dissonances sort of fall apart there before he ended up getting shelved and shoved all those secrets into his head. But we also see that kind of repeatedly. We've had that Bernard as a sign of damage to the brain. We also had the bartender this episode, also with a bit of a shake. And I'm starting to wonder, is that shake going to be definitive of maybe something wrong as a critical cascade, if you were. Perhaps not all of our host manifestations are responding well to their newfound freedom. Perhaps this is opening up, perhaps because this is making them so much like potentially the real people in host bodies. I'm not sure exactly how to phrase that. But because of that sort of reality opening things up, they're no longer programmed with that much openness and so many possibilities. Cannot all of them grasp that? So I'm wondering if that's something we're going to start to see in the park, is we're seeing hosts maybe developing a shake, starting to fall apart, that they can't maintain that. But really what we got here with Abernathy was the interesting change with the Man in Black, which sort of persists in this episode, sort of part of his theme. And that is kind of finding his humanity. And we start to see that with this last shot of Abernathy. It's the 149th iteration. It's not working. It's only 35 days. Obviously, years and years have passed. Perhaps in a few more years they might break it. But now William is having second thoughts. He knows what a bastard he is and how much it has affected his family and the world. His wife is gone. But James's wife was died. She died of a stroke. Logan OD'd. I mean, we're seeing all of this sort of cascade of horror and death behind him. And I think William is starting to see that maybe they don't deserve to be alive. Certainly even this robotic version of James is kind of an old bastard. And I loved how William kind of just spoke right to him. Of course, he doesn't have the same fear as we did when he was younger. He's now the badass, so he can go ahead and talk to this bot trapped inside this room forever. But even just sort of addressing that is, you don't deserve to live. Maybe dying is the best thing that we can do for this world. And I get the idea that this is maybe William's visit right before season 1 of Westworld, right before he goes back into park to kind of have his final bit, to serve the maze, kind of find his own reason for being. And maybe Ford's movement with this new game is maybe to help him refine his humanity. He seems to be on the path. He seems to be rejecting his sense of self and what he has done, and perhaps regretting these choices. And I think through this, we're starting to find that maybe the Man in Black might be trying to get his white hat again. Because, of course, as he and Lawrence run into Major Craddock and company, things don't go exactly the way that William wanted. And we do have this constant appeal. Even when they're captured, Lawrence is remembering that William has a daughter. Don't remember where I remember this from, but I remember that you mentioned it, which is just kind of a cool thing of, again, the host starting to access previous memories, which sort of throws William off, which, you know, is always kind of interesting to see. But again, that appeal towards humanity. You have a daughter, would you want her to see you murdered right in front of her? Of course, his response is, yeah, probably, which just goes to show the relationship that they have. But this sort of appeals to it. And we have Craddock, of course, as the new kind of psychopath, the dancer with death, as it all goes. I do love, I mean, you know, again, William's not the type of person to back down. I do love him throwing in the face of just, here's the weapons, but this isn't what you're looking for. What you're looking for is that road to glory. I know how to get you there, that place that you don't even know. You don't even know where you're going, but you haven't told your men. I mean, this is William, again, titan of industry, total badass, has been coming to the park this whole time, knows how to talk to these hosts, these creatures. So I really loved all that initial back and forth and setup. But really, this gets to our primary conflict between the two of them, which does, of course, become our Scene of the Week for this week. Because, again, it was that turnaround of old William, of the Man in Black, potentially reaching out to grab his white hat from history. Yes, he's a dark man, but Craddock is crazy. And yes, William is subjected. He can be killed at this point. All the safety things are off. It does add the stakes to it. But I love how they did the whole setup there. Again, we had the whole bartender bit, who is shaking. Again, wondering if there's an injury right there. And Craddock uses him as just sort of, I mean, first of all, pouring nitroglycerin in a glass and putting it on a hand to walk try and walk steadily, that's just kind of messed up. that's just kind of dark. And then when he pulls it off, he just blows the hand off. Lawrence told him, as soon as Craddock finds out what he wants, he's going to kill the whole town anyway. And Craddock certainly seems to be embracing that whole idea. And this is what William is kind of facing. He's bonded with Lawrence over all of his visits and all of this time. And he knows about the kid here, and he knows about the family. And he is thinking about this humanity. We can tell from that visit with Delos, as we see later on in the episode, which reflects back onto this. He's grasping back at his humanity. He's starting to see that he has made mistakes, that perhaps this is not the way to go. And tying that in with the shots of him running upstairs and finding his wife has killed herself, and seeing this whole thing is that he's going to die, and he knows that the wife is being sent out, and she's got the drink of the nitroglycerin, dangerous enough as it is there. But even as she gets there, as Craddock has already shown, he's probably going to shoot her anyway. He's going to kill Lawrence. He's going to do all of this. William doesn't necessarily need them. But he can't turn his back on it. He sees a darker form around here. And I love that turnaround. How he was just like, oh, you're talking about death? You think you know death? You don't know death. Because you've been sitting right across from him this whole time and you didn't recognize. Oh, I mean, that's just like, come on. That is the most badass gunslinger statement that you could ever make. And then breaks the bottle, stabs him in the neck, pulls around, uses the one guy as a shield, just goes out and takes out everybody. It was just, it was an awesome, heroic moment. Because that's what it is. It's a heroic moment. And then especially even turning around and letting Lawrence have that last bit of revenge, pouring the nitroglycerin into Craddock's mouth, and then let him walk away. I was wondering for a while. I was like, I thought it was nitro. And I was like, is this tequila? They're drinking it, and they're pouring shots, but that doesn't seem right. And then at the end, where he gives him the gun and he shoots him in the head, his head blows up because it's nitro. Oh, come on. That's such a perfect Western scene. It was beautiful. Now, as a coda to that, of course, we do have that last little encounter with Lawrence's daughter. Of course, Ford has already used her body before, which William immediately recognizes. And the little girl says, you know, this is part of the game. There seems to be an implied statement here that that William just did this because it's part of Ford's game. I recognize your game, and if I'm going to play it, I'm going to play it to the max. I think in that way he seems to be pawning off his humanity moment as just playing into Ford's hand, but I don't think that's the case. I think that's William trying to give an excuse of why he doesn't want to play Ford's game, and yet his own personal progression is starting to lead him in that path. And I think that's what Ford had seen in William. That yes, you have all this darkness. Yes, you want to be the bad guy. Yes, you're the badass. But ultimately, there is humanity in you. And I think Ford knows that he's going to need William's humanity in order to thwart Delos' dark plan to replace humanity with robots. Something like that. Now, of course, the other real main story point here is Elsie and Barnard. I was so happy to see Elsie. And to sort of find out what had happened to her. Apparently after being choked up, she got chained up and stuck in a cave with a bucket and a handful of protein bars. Gross, but also kind. Why? Why is he waiting around? This is, again, you start to see as it all falls apart of this really complex plan that Ford seems to have had to put all of these pieces laid out. Because that's why Elsie was there. Was to partner up with Barnard in order to find this lab. And I think there's a few questions that might come out of that. But I love the intro. I love, of course, Clementine dragging Ford up. I love his butt is all worn out. The pennant from being dragged by Clementine, all worn out. It was a nice, just little touch right there. I thought that was fun. But really what we have, outside of just a great, you know, hey, Elsie, you're still alive here, apparently. I love the whole sequence of Barnard drifting in and out of memories here. There was a lot of great camera work, but they would keep the camera shot and just show that there was a change, and then move, and then you see, you know, Barnard walking past and up into the cave, And then the camera pans around and Elsie's back there talking to Barnard. I love those little moments. There's a few times in with this. Even later on when they were inside of the lab and Barnard finds that he is drifting into memory. He thinks he's following Elsie up to the door, and yet it's not really him. That's just him drifting around in and out of through his memory. So I loved all of those sequences. I thought those were really well done. I thought it was nice that Elsie was willing to help Barnard out so much. I like the line, I trust code more than people. Okay, accepting who Barnard really is here. It added a fun dynamic, I think, between the two of them, because there is sort of a connection, there's sort of a history, and yet, understandably, she doesn't entirely trust him because she choked him out and stuck him inside of a cave. But I love that whole sequence. I thought the whole lab thing was done really well. And again, we start to see all these little ideas sort of dropped here. Primarily, this is the lab where they were creating new program, new control boards, new brains. Did you notice the brains kind of look like cupcakes? I always thought they looked like red velvet cupcakes inside those little racks. But they were making new control things. That's what this is. And as we find out overall, not only was Barnard in here, Barnard came in here, made one last little control brain, and then ordered all the drones to kill all the lab people. So a lot of darkness still we don't know. He is saying this is part of Ford's control. And I'm willing to sort of believe that, and yet there seems to always be some extra layer going on. Even at the end, I was not really divulging that extra information to Elsie. Probably smart not to share that bit of information, but there's much more going on with Barnard. How much of that was Ford's, and how much now that Ford is dead, is he actually making his own choices? But as for that brain, what was it? What was that last final brain? And I'm wondering if that's Elsie's brain. Is Elsie actual Elsie, or is that a new human form? Is that what we're doing? Because she was very convenient in her placement there in order to help Barnard. Certainly willing to help him, overcoming any doubts that she might have of helping a host, even one that choked her out. So I'm wondering, I'm getting a little suspicion, is this a real Elsie or is this an Elsie bot? Because we did see something being made when Elsie was taken out inside that other lab beneath Ford's house. There was another host being made inside that little lab right there. Is that for her? And was that then Barnard getting a new brain for the Elsie bot? I don't know, but I'm suspecting. And then, of course, their last little bit was finally breaking through that door and discovering James Delos's little training observation room there. And the 149th iteration, the same one as when William had left. It was right there on the screen. So, same version, now allowed to sort of cascade out. Observe as the brain degrades right there. And maybe that was the big change that we have. Because it had taken so long. I mean, obviously years and years and years. It only got extended from 7 days to 35 days. So there didn't seem to be any current breakthrough going on with this pursuit. However, we also have this big move by Delos to kind of collect all of the guests' information and history and DNA and you know, put it all in Abernathy and get him out. There seems to be a big push to that information. So I am wondering if perhaps William's decision to not terminate the host, to not terminate this iteration of Delos, but let them observe his sort of mental degradation, did that provide the key? Did seeing how those pathways degrade and how that all fell apart answer the questions of why why these things have been working? And this is the reason why Delos is now pushing so hard to get all of this information. Because that, again, seems to be the only one single change. And also the technician who was supposed to be observing Delos, he was inside the room with Delos, who was all locked in. Why was he in there? Certainly no reason for it. There wasn't any other breakage. The James Delos bot couldn't get out. So I'm I'm just kind of wondering if maybe this was the shift, this was that kind of unexpected change, the success that comes out of failure. And then our last little reveal had to do with Grace, our visitor from Colonial Land there, running into Stubbs. Remember, last that we saw, Stubbs had been captured by the Ghost Nation. We know that he finally made it out because he was there in the future in the 2 weeks ahead meeting up with Barnard. So this seems to be how he survived. Grace there with a bunch of the other hosts and Stubbs all collected together, taken out to meet the first one who will go ahead and decide fates. Grace not having any of it. You fool, hits him with a torch and runs off. That actually kind of surprised me how they let her do it, but I think they may have decided not to kill anyway. Interesting little last statement that the medicine man said to Stubbs: you will only live for as long as the last person alive who can remember you. It's kind of very deep and philosophical. And then everyone was gone. He turns around and it's empty. What happened to everybody else? It's like that Batman disappearance. You turn your head and then suddenly everybody's gone. So apparently this is how Stubbs survived. He was released and then probably made his way back up to the Mesa. We'll, I'm sure, find out the rest of his story going on. But what this reveal really does, of course, lead to Grace's escape, where she gets a horse and runs into, at the end, William, a.k.a. Dad. So yes, Grace is William's kid. Few theories out there suggesting if that might be the case. Yes, you were right. I did find it interesting also when old man Delos was talking to William and asking about his granddaughter. Didn't reveal the name at any point. Talked about the wife, talked about the Logan, talked about the granddaughter, but no name there. The minute they didn't give a name, I was thinking, it was like, is this going to be the reveal? Is it Grace? So yes, and of course that would explain Grace's approach towards the park. What she say is that most people don't pay attention to their narratives. I'm not like most people. Having a father like William that connected in with the park, being so connected with the park through the family, she would know everything. And probably explains why she prefers to be in Colonial Land and not Westworld. Dad wants to go to Westworld, and she's going to be anywhere but there. Alright, just a couple of small things. One, guests used as railroad ties in that opening sequence. That was nasty. Kind of impractical too. They're awful squishy, they give, and there seem to be plenty of other supplies. So just interesting to see how the different parks and different groups are all reacting to the hosts. Most negatively. Though, obviously, Ghost Nation seemed to have gone ahead and let them go. So, you have that. Also, another indication that perhaps Ford is trying to steer William towards his original white hat ways. The girl, Lawrence's daughter in the town, at the very end, tells William, if you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction. And I wonder if that's implying to look back to your original ways where you came from when you wanted to be the hero. Not sure. Potentially. The irony of James Delos dying of a disease that he cut the funding for 10 years prior. Beautiful. That's like the definition of irony. I like Barnard saving Elsie there from the crazed final attack by the Papa Delos bot at the end. I mean, it's just, you know, obviously Elsie doesn't know whether she can trust Barnard. So the fact that he's stepping forward to save her when he could go ahead and just let her die goes a long way to, you know, improving that trust for sure. Though, of course, if Ellie is just a bot there, then, I mean, yes, Barnard could be doing all that protection just to kind of insert himself and gain trust. That is true if you want to go for the dark side. But I do like Barnard's idea of, you know, I now have a chance to make my own choices. And I think he does want to be the good guy. Even though he's got some questionable actions and darkness behind him. Alright, well I think that pretty much covers everything. So next week, it's all Shogun all the time as we see Maeve's adventures in S-World. And hopefully we'll find out if that means Shogun World or Samurai World. Could go either way. And also just really excited to see more of the parks, more of this crafted world. And Maeve does seem to be embracing a whole new side of herself. So I cannot wait to see that. Anyway, that's it for us. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those down in the section below. Now you can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. And if you're not a subscriber, please join us. It's quick, it's easy, it's a one-button hit. You'll catch all these reviews. And in fact, we'll throw a couple of our random reviews right here. You can go ahead and check out. So, that's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.